Hello, everybody. Very good evening. And thank you so much for taking time to join us on one of our videos. Today, for a change, it's not about a solo performance or it's not just Sriji and I talking as you're all used to. Today, we have Suresh joining us. Suresh is a seasoned life coach, a wonderful human being that I've known for several years now, and a great psychology enthusiast who takes immense pleasure in helping people grow and develop all the time. Suresh, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to
Thanks,
have you.
Ram.
And Suresh is actually part of our core team, so he's going to continue to be part of what we are doing with Manogna. So I'm very happy to have you on board. Welcome, Suresh.
Thank you.
Although
Welcome, Suresh ji.
Thank you,
Sriji,
Srini.
Sriji needs no introduction. He's a familiar face for all of you who've watched our videos, but then we've never formally introduced Sriji so far. Sriji is a research scholar, a multifaceted personality, right? And he is an adjunct professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. He's a research scholar with JK Tires, right? And as I think the one common trait that we three share is that we all have jobs that deal with touching lives and also dealing with people who span the entire spectrum of people comprising different ages, which means different generations, right? And we thought because we three are coming together for the first time, uh, we should actually talk about one topic that once in a while comes up and then kind of dissipates, and that is about generation gap. So today we are going to have a casual musing once again, where we'll try to talk about what is generation gap all about, the different perspectives that we might share on that, and then we will probably look at why is it so important for us to understand and acknowledge generation gap, what it is all about, and what are the benefits of understanding and acknowledging it, and what are some of the pitfalls if we fail to recognize that. So I think that is briefly what we will touch upon today. So I welcome Suresh and Sriji
Yeah.
to share a bit before we actually dive into the topic and move on for the day. Thank you.
Like you suggested rightly, Ram, many of our viewers had also reflected that this is one topic that we discuss on board. And it is very relevant, in my opinion, both in personal front as well as official front. Especially, this is more relevant for people who deal with people as a part of their job, maybe HR, or even however technical your line may be. You may even be the best surgeon in the city. You will still have to deal with the juniors, right? And they may be of different ages. So even in the work front, generation gap is something that's very serious. And personal front, when you are in your middle age, especially people like both of the other hosts in this show, when you're in your middle age, you have got a generation on top of you and a generation which is after you. And we need to be very careful in addressing the concerns. One, you cannot have a lacuna blaming everything on the generation gap, that's not going to work. But at that same time, uh, assuming that the world for people after you will be the same for the same as the world that was for you at that particular age is a blunder. It's wrong. Assuming that the age gap between a parent and a child conservatively will be 25 odd, conservatively, 25 years is a long time even for a country. So much changes within that time. So world for us in a particular age will not be the same as the world for the next generation in the same age. How do you appreciate this for being serious enough as well as compassionate enough with the facts of the changing generations? It's what I wanted to understand from both of you people. And this is very particular for teachers as well as industrial people. Academically speaking, Ram, in my humble opinion, I may be wrong. Academicians may correct if we are wrong in this. Every 5 years, once we can say it's a new generation in
Hmm.
academics, right? Someone who writes a board exam in 2010, someone in 2015, someone in 2005. I will say these three people are belonging to three different generations because the board also evolves, the education system also evolves in the way it tests people. So many things happen. And before I wind up, especially in the wake of a world pandemic like COVID-19, which had put a lot of people in home, especially children. and students. I feel even in universities, schools, there is a before COVID era and an after COVID era that's happening. But people who are responsible for inculcating habits and education, they are the same. They have not changed. So this episode, I believe, it will be specifically addressing those people who have to deal with the change that something like pandemic like COVID has put onto the society, especially people who did their undergraduation and post graduation during COVID times are now becoming employees of companies, right? So there is definitely a change that COVID has brought out in the way people work, in the way people think, in the way people use technology also. So generation gap as a topic should also address these gaps is what I believe. So with these questions in the hand, first I would like to ask both of you, of course, after hearing to Suresh ji on his inputs, I would like to ask both of you, first of all, what all can go wrong if generation gap is not appreciated? Number one. Number two, what's this generation gap? Number three, how do you make yourself ready to empathize, acknowledge, and work on generation gap? Thank you. Yeah, Suresh ji.
Lovely, Sri. I think that's your trademark of talking about a topic, right? That's lovely put. And in fact, when you call upon those gaps between as a parent with a child and a generation above and generation after, it's so beautiful, right? So as a parent myself, I'm as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a friend, as a co-employee, and also those things when we in a day-to-day life when we go through this, and then when elders talk to you like in 1942 we were living like this and we did not had any traffic around us, and I think those days as a child when we hear this ஆரம்பிச்சிட்டாரா அப்படி like it's just that kind of
Absolutely.
things that things go in our mind, right? I think that is the experience that we need to understand that every generation has a gap in terms of
Yeah,
understanding the language they speak. Though we speak the same mother tongue, but then the language it's changes like when different generations speak to each other because they don't understand. And I think that's something which I love to have this conversation. It's a very interesting topic. I'm sure like we'll be talking about more of these experience, how we can handle this. So I am really pleasure and happy to be part of this, discussion. I can call this as podcast. This is really nice podcast that we are making, right? So yeah, thank you so much, Srini, and thank you so much, Ram, for welcoming me here. And I'm sure like I want to be an not an extended family and part of this family to bring more insights on interesting topic like this.
you are definitely you are one of the key members of this family. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
why don't we start with your opinion on what all can go wrong if generation gap is not considered?
There's so many that can go wrong, right? Just for an example, let's say for example, when we were child and it's basically a father and son, right? So when we go out somewhere and then we'll ask something, let's say I was talking to this with my wife 3 days back. We were in a beach and I was sharing this with her. I told her like we were in the beach and watching the waves coming in and going back. So I was telling my wife, every time my father brings me here, I will say the last wave, let that come and then we can leave. So
Correct.
I keep
True.
saying the same thing again and again. My father used to be like, he will allow me to enjoy, though he knows that he has time at home, needs to go to the market after coming back, all those responsibilities, he still allows us to play, right? And that is something, that's the generation which understand the younger generation. But when we grow and take the responsibility of taking our parents, do we understand their language? Do we still respect them? And this is one thing I just want to bring back quickly because everybody can connect. So I
Very
see
true.
as a younger generation, we have to take responsibility I would say youngest. Sorry, Srini. So I'm being part of along with your generation. So yeah. So you called her age anyway.
Yes,
So being more wise. So I think that one example I just want to bring, because as a parent, and when you become responsible to that age, striking the balance, understanding the older generation as well as the younger generation. So I think it's very important for a family to be integrated together. It makes a lot of difference because that adds value as a family value together. So that's where I want to kickstart. So I give it to Ram. What do you think, Ram?
No, I think two really standout things that you brought up is we may all speak the same mother tongue, but the language can be entirely different. I think that's these are, we always say, right, some words have to be set in stone. I think that is something that has to be really set in stone, because one of the things that you shared this very beautiful experience of going to the beach and then saying, let the last wave come in and then we can go home. And the parent, your father, having the kindness to let you enjoy the moment despite having so much to do. Right? It's quite easy for people to say, oh, you know what? Back then, their lifestyles were very simple. They had simpler things, but they also had fewer luxuries. They also had lot more challenges financially, lot more challenges in terms of keeping that family integrated, right? Lot more politics to balance and manage within the extended family. There was no concept of extended family, right? Back then, it was all family. So while all of that was there, they were still kind enough. And then it's quite easy to ascribe that to not being distracted and this and that. It's very easy to get diverted. But I think the core of that is they recognize that we were children, that we came from a different world, and we were entitled to our beautiful or innocent ignorance, if I can call it that way. And then I think the best service we can do to future generations is to pass that on, to allow our children to be as innocently ignorant, to create what we call the psychologically safe space for them to learn and grow. And then for them to have, I think our real success as parents would be measured if they have a podcast 30 years from now or 40 years from now and they narrate a story about how we let them do something as sweet as what you did, or that beautiful interaction between you and your father. And for all of that, like you said, it's very important that we acknowledge that despite being the same building, the same family setup, speaking the same mother tongue, the languages can be different because the worlds we see are totally different. That is something that I just wanted to add. And Srini, to your point as to why it is important to acknowledge that there is a generation gap. And you said appreciate. I think that is also something we need to do, right? Really need to not just acknowledge its existence, but also appreciate its impact on our day-to-day lives. And I think only when the two go hand in hand, we will at least start thinking about how to relate with
address
the
it.
other person, right? That's when the empathy part of human relationship kicks in. Otherwise, we are going to just what do you call assume that we have anyway passed everything somatically or automatically because to the next generation, or we have picked up everything from the previous generation, or like you said, Suresh and I are we have a generation above and a generation below, right?
Hello.
And you'll soon have that. And so when we start and when we believe that without that empathy, we believe that both generations understand us, and then that causes that creates room for,
Harmony.
yeah, that creates room for
Very true.
double the conflict, right? If we are not
Yeah.
understood,
Yes,
we are not
yes,
going to be understood by two sets of people. So
Mm.
yeah, I'll take a
yes.
pause. I think that's probably how I want to start off. So
Mm. In fact, Ram, when you told you when you were speaking, you had put a point that it would be great if you can make the next generation have the same innocence. Now I will ask you a question. I know these questions don't have a correct answer, and you cannot develop a SOP for the way people live. But I will still tell you how you are when you say you are going to when you say that you are aiming to make them innocent. Is there a particular way of doing it? The reason why I am asking is, to some extent you can see the difference that you had during that particular age and what your child has in a particular age, but you can never become your child again. In other words, back then you had neighbors with whom you were playing and all those in that age. Now children are having majorly these kids are having devices. So to some extent, you can understand that it is now a world which is more individualistic, which has space only for its own self. And in that particular space, in that particular way of thinking, if you try to inculcate the innocence thinking about the way in which probably innocence could have been inculcated to you as a child, I don't think so. The same metric can be applied to the next generation, given that the very situation, the very framework in which the growth happens itself is very different. So, that being the case, how do you account for this change when you are in a position of upbringing a child, or when you are in a position of nurturing a junior? The same thing, if I can just take a couple of minutes, you can extend it to your organization also. Today, you both are very senior people and you've been in the industries for last 2 decades. So you people are perhaps the most correct people for a youngster like me to ask this question to, right? As you progress in an industry, as you progress in your field, you will always be having new set of juniors who come in. And the way situations have changed between the days when you did your graduation and they did their graduation. So if you were to mend someone else, who's a junior to you, you can't apply the same tactics or the same metrics that you would have done, probably assuming yourself to be of that age, because the very situation in which the learning was done was very different between the two people. So how do you try to take an extra step forward and understanding that, okay, this is how these people are trained during their childhood, and is it first of all possible to do it the way I am thinking about? Maybe I am wrong. Is it possible first? And if it is possible, how do you empathize with the situations that
And how
Mm.
make it ready to train them or upbring them? Yeah, I hope my question was clear and not very long. Sorry if in that case.
I think it's pretty clear, right? So, because one thing, and again, thanks for again putting us on spotlight that we are old, Sri, and you're young. So,
No, no,
so
that was
anyway, that's
genuinely
on a light,
daunting.
on a lighter note,
Yeah.
right? But I think it is so important, right? Particularly younger generation with the gadgets around, there is no kinesthetic happening, right? They're more focused on auditory and visual. I want to just give an example. Again, I'm bringing my own family experiences, right? um, my younger son likes to watch videos, right? But then if there is any audio played, it doesn't like. If plays, if it is played along with the video, that's okay. But anything on audio,
Mm.
it doesn't like. And again, I think it's very important for as a parent, we need to understand kids have these three types. One can be dominant, the other can be second, and the third can be the least. So I just want to call out these three things: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. You need to understand as a parent, there is no gadget. Of course, there are softwares which are available for there are based on few parameters, and it can tell you what kind of kid the child is. So how we can approach. There are other softwares that are available, but basic without even the software. If your kid likes to cuddle with you, braces, hugs, and immediately you can understand your kid is a kinesthetic child. If your child is doesn't
Sorry to
like you,
interrupt you. Can you
yeah,
expand a little bit on what kinesthetic means? Sorry to
it's
have
like
interrupted, just to make it clear.
and it's more basically skin touch. If they like to rub
Oh,
and feel that warmth, but, that huddle, hugs, all these things, right? Basically, they like this
Chellam,
to be done. Chello, correct. So
Chellam, right.
same thing, like some kids are very good in visual. They do very good drawings and artistic eyes they have. They can immediately when they see something, they can register very quickly. They are good avid readers. Visual people are good readers. So again, similarly, like auditory, they like to hear stories. Those kids, if you understand what is your kid, what kind of person he or she is, I think that will help as a parent to even more connect with the child to make them understand. For example, why I'm saying this is, so let's say the kids are more uh, you know going along with the gadgets. I will blame it on a parent as well, because maybe parents are too busy. They're not giving the
Mm-hmm.
attention to the child. They're letting the child to use. I'm seeing this nowadays, right? To eat food, they have to play some videos on the gadget, and they have to eat. So the parent, mother doesn't mind, or father doesn't mind, or the grandparent doesn't mind to play a video so that at least the child is eating food. I think that is
And in
basic
many cases,
from,
they are helpless. Yeah.
yeah, I think that is something which we need to stop. Uh, it doesn't, child
Mm.
doesn't know, but we know.
Mm.
A small child who can't even speak doesn't know to say, it's something they like, that's it. But you can stop it.
Yeah.
You can do something interesting. Talk to the child. I think more personal touch is required than these gadgets. The gadgets are replacing. I think this is a very cause of thing, worry. It's a warning sign. We have to, as a
Yeah.
parent, be
Yeah.
responsible. That we have to stop these gadgets taking our replacement. Parent are getting replaced with gadgets. That is something which is a worrying sign that we need to stop. I just stop here. I'll give it to Ram. What do you think, Ram?
No, no, I think that's a again right. That the way you kind of closed it was beautiful in the sense. The gadgets are replacing us, right? So when we were children, I think, and for a very long time, the most popular way of feeding children was for somebody, the mother or the grandmother or the father, to carry the child, have the vessel on hand, show them the moon or something there. And when that was happening, like you said, the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic senses, right, which is essentially your gross and fine motor skills, were all set in motion. The child had to hold the parent. There was physical proximity. The touch was there. There was still visual stimulation. Look at the moon, look at the stars, or look at the uncle going there, or look at that cow going there, or something like that. Right. And it paved the way for them to have that relationship as well. And today, there is the influx of gadgets and so many other things. Uh, is actually very unfortunate. I think, like Srinivasan was mentioning at the start, the pandemic exacerbated this also, and then it almost kind of made these devices and gadgets the only window to the world that we had. And to a large extent, this again kind of tying back to the whole generation argument, right? Even we as elders are being big time to blame because number one, we ourselves spend a lot of time on these gadgets. So on television, on gadgets, right? The gadgets is a gadget. Television is also a gadget. And then we tell children, oh, you should not do this, right?
Beautiful point.
Right. And then what happens is children don't grow or form or their formation or their grow development is not on the basis of what we tell them or what they hear. It is dominantly on the basis of how we serve as good role models or bad role models, right? So we believe that okay, my parents showed me something, right? They gave me all the stimulation. So I'm giving my child some stimulation. Instead of watching the moon, the child is watching some cartoon on the mobile phone without realizing that generations have passed and then that actual parent-child interaction and the whole attachment process and the attunement process, which is very, very critical for healthy development of a child, is not there today. Right. So this is one direction of the argument, right? I think that is why I really liked how Suresh closed it, is because the mobile phone has substituted the parent, it has substituted the cow, the moon, and pretty much everything, which means the world is moving from reality to some kind of an augmented or virtual or alternate reality, which is not reality at the end of the day. Right. So this is number one. Interestingly, if we note, the older generation is also going into that. We are probably the only generation that still acknowledges that this dichotomy exists, right? There is this actual real world that we know we experience as children because those memories are very, very dominant and fresh, right? And then we also know that because we are the ones who predominantly have enabled this new world, right? This app dominated world, if I can call it that. And then so we acknowledge that that is also as much a reality. So the question we can ask is how much of an effort. So then it falls on us to actually model what responsible use of all of this is. And that is one of the key duties that we have in terms of what do you call appreciating the reality of how generations have changed over time. You made a point
Mm,
about what was 25 years has become 5 years. It was 10 years sometime back. It's now 5 years. We don't even know. That is the rate of change that we are
Yeah.
looking at today. Right. And so what are some of the things you asked a question about how can I inculcate innocence? Can I answer that? Is it okay?
Please, please, please,
Sure.
please,
So
please.
innocence is not something that you and I can inculcate, right? It is fundamentally a very honest and
You can
open.
at least not disturb someone from being innocent, right?
Because innocence at the end of the day is actually a very nice way of saying that the child
yeah.
is open without fear of judgment, or anybody for
Mm,
that matter. If you say somebody is really innocent, so Ram is a very innocent guy, then that means I'm just being very open, shamelessly open. Without 42 years, I cannot be innocent, right? Then I'm only shamelessly open. But the child, child typically the innocence is there because they don't have the experience, right? They're still figuring out what the world is all about. And Suresh brought up this important point, right? All round sensory motor stimulation for the child is extremely important. But elders are also going and falling prey, right? Children are sitting in front of mobile phones and all. Elders are sitting in front of OTT channels watching so 500, 600 episode serials where that is also another generation story. Right? So that is
Seriously,
definitely there. So what do
seriously.
we do about this whole innocence part of it? Is number one,
mm,
there is no special technique or tool or any special faculty that we need to develop. I think human to human, if we are to connect with somebody meaningfully, and if we are able to touch lives, right, we need to, first of all, we call this joining, right? We need to join everybody in their world. Children are
mm.
dealing with figuring out what is important in their life. Elders are dealing with several other things which we often ignore because we think, oh, they're all old people, they are experienced. But they are dealing with the prospect of a shorter lifespan. They are dealing with bodily functions declining. They are dealing with retirement. They are dealing with potent prospects of children leaving, right? So I think if we are acknowledging all of these different things, it is important that across different lifespan, people have different comforts, different degrees of confidence, and different fears. So it is very important for us to acknowledge that so children can be innocent, adults can remain curious, and elders can be content. I'll probably pause here to pass on to Suresh for him to add.
I think so beautifully said, right? So the other thing, along with the innocence, I see that we are losing is creativity, right? Again,
Interesting.
so the reason why I say this, right? Generation,
Mhm.
um, I think, irrespective of the generation, we are losing ourselves to the digital world and the gadgets, right? Irrespective of the generation. The because I would say this because um, gadgets understand the generation much better because they give content respective to that generation, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
because of which everybody are glued to one gadget, and that is something is also a common problem across generation. I would not say this is one commonality, not a gap across all generation. We are losing ourselves. It's just not the younger generation. I think innocent is lost. Creativity is also lost along with this. I share a beautiful again example, right? I bring my own family again and again. The reason why it starts from home, all these experiments, because when we understand our family, I think that is where we should begin, and then use this experiences, and share it and learn from the other outer world as well. So I was traveling with my kids in a car, and then on the road, my eldest son, he got his first mobile because he has a lot of classes, so we wanted to stay connected with him, so we gave him a mobile phone. When returning back we went to old age home and we were returning back home, and then on the way he was using his gadget and doing something. I requested him, so what do you think? We visited a old age home, what do you think? And he was sharing all this experience. Then I requested, put that gadget down, just observe your surrounding. Okay. I just asked him to don't do anything. Just observe around you. Like if we are going in a car, there is so many things happening around you. Just give an observation. So luckily, my elder still listens to me. So he took the instruction and he kept the phone and he was watching everything. And suddenly a spark comes into his mind. He says, "Daddy, how much of water?" He saw a water tank, lorry that was traveling side by side, and so bad that the water was oozing like this. Not it was towards the left of the vehicle, the water, the excess water when it flashes out. So it was oozing the on the left side. It was like a overflow pipe. So it was falling on the cars on the left. So the moment he noticed and said, "Daddy, so much of water that we are losing. It looks like at least 20 gallons of the water can be lost in transit from supply to the customer." So imagine how many lorries that every day it carries water. He was thinking that way, and then I said, "Then let me Google and check." I like the way now the gadget is helping him to do analysis. So he Googled and found out that some statistics says like 13,000 lorries with a capacity of average like 7,000 liters carry water every day in Chennai city. I said, wonderful. Then what do you think, from this data, what you interfere? So I'm sharing the story, right? The reason why, and then we led to think that, why don't, how we can prevent this water wastage? So many are suffering with water crisis. If we save this, at least to an extent of, at least 3 loads of water we can save every hour, every hour. So that kind of data I was able to gather. So I'm bringing this again. Why? See the creativity, just few minutes off without gadget and observing around. Kids have so much potential, and we are losing to a. I love the way TV was called as an idiot box before. So I
Yes,
just like
yes,
to, and the garbage computer is a garbage. So what goes in comes out. So I just want to share the story because we can understand what we are losing. This is important that experience generation again want to call upon the gap, right? How we can solve this? We can talk to the older generation, listen to them, acknowledge and accept the creativity. It will allow them to share more things with us. Let's not say, poi vale parra. This is a common thing every street. I know it happens. Nothing interesting. Just take a gadget and do something interesting. It's useful, useless story. I allowed the kid to speak. I think this is important as an elder, as a
brilliant,
parent. This is something we need to do. Yeah.
brilliant. Brilliant. So, Sureshji, you are suggesting that talk to both the generations, even if it is something above
Yeah,
you, sit
absolutely.
and talk, understand them. Even if it is
Yeah.
younger to you, sit and talk and understand them.
Yes.
That's a very nice point which naturally came out from you sharing your experience. Of course, on a lighter note for your son, it is better that the water leaks out. Otherwise, it
I
will
know.
flood the vehicle itself.
the
So
Yeah,
good that
I
there
did
is a water.
share. I did share that to him. Why they have this out? Because
Yeah,
that the amount of volume that is carrying when it breaks, it has to dissipate the energy
huge
out.
energy.
Otherwise,
Yes,
it'll be a huge energy. Yeah.
yes, yes. And now, just continuing, I would like both of you people to continue on how do you deal it on a professional front, right? Even in professional fronts, this is a serious question. You cannot put your juniors on the, you cannot put yourself on the juniors of your shoe, meaning, sorry, no, 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 on the shoes of your juniors. Same time, it's not like your seniors. There is a generation gap between that's involved there also. So, can you people throw some light on understanding that, how it is worked upon usually?
It's a whole
This
topic
is a
on itself, right, Sriji? So can we probably take a logical pause? I think we understand. I think Suresh summed it up beautifully, right? He said
Yep.
we need to talk to them to understand, or we need to talk with each of them, right, and understand.
Yes.
The only way to
Yes.
understand people is to talk to them. So
Yes,
we'll
yes,
probably take a pause. I think it's a very beautiful logical point, and then you have kindled our question. So in the next part, we'll probably continue talking about what it takes to translate
sure.
the same thing in the workplace and probably be effective in dealing with multiple generations of peers, if I can
Yes,
put it that way.
yes, yes,
Excellent.
yes.
Good. So great start, folks. I think thank you, Suresh, again for joining us. I don't
Thank
say
you,
coming
Ram.
on board because you are again part of the family core part. You are Manogya, so I'm so happy to reiterate that. And Sriji, I think as always,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Suresh, sir.
Thank you, Sri. Thank you, Ram.